talking about the Jannah and the heaven, and we went through a description of the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ of the last man who enters the heaven and the reward that he gets from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we talked about how our viewing of the heaven and visioning of the heaven should be a drive for us to achieve more hasanat and to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala more and worship Him more. We talked about the actions that we can do for that and to fulfill the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for us. However, when we think about the heaven and the reward of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's not the only drive that should be driving us as Muslims or as believers. The Prophet ﷺ, when he was talking to his companions, and it has been narrated many times, that the Prophet ﷺ talks about the heaven and talks also about the hellfire, of the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or the hellfire, has been mentioned more than 200 times in the Quran. So it has been mentioned many, many times. But because of our human nature, we always tend to think about what's the reward. Let's look at the good side and let's try to avoid talking or thinking about the bad side or the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. However, the scholars say that the heaven is the drive for the believer to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala more, to be more obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the hellfire is the drive that keeps the believer away from committing sins, away from disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They also say that the believer is like a bird that has two wings. A wing that is the hope for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy, the hope for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's reward, the hope for all that entails in the wing of the hope. But the other wing is also the fear. Fearing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's punishment. Fearing the hellfire. Fearing what will happen on the Day of Judgment. But as a bird, the believer has to fly with both wings. If you fail to fly, if you have one wing very stronger than the other wing, the bird won't fly. Same as the believer. You have to have both wings. The fear is essential when we become very comfortable with our lives. When one of us commits a sin, he thinks, all what I have to do is just make tawbah and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive me. Yeah, I'll just lift myself up and I'll become better. When committing a sin it's not that big of, it is a deal, but it's not that big of a deal. When we become comfortable with our worshiping, there is no drive that I want to do more. There is no drive I want to prove to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that no, I shouldn't be punished on the Day of Judgment. At that point, the wing of the fear becomes essential to make the believer in a better place. Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Mas'ud once heard one of the companions, he was giving an excuse for slacking off. And he was saying, "Inna Allah la yukallifu Allahu nafsan illa wus'aha." That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't ask us or doesn't ordain on a soul more than what it can handle. La yukallifu Allahu nafsan illa wus'aha. So Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Mas'ud responding saying, "Wallahu ya'lamu wus'aha fahdharuh." And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows the soul's true ability, so be aware. So when you're thinking that this is more than I can handle, think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what you truly can handle. And He will hold you accountable for that. One of the tabi'een, or the followers of the Prophet ﷺ, he was praying once in his household, and he was reading the Quran, and then he began crying and crying and crying. His family were around him and tried to tell him, hold yourself, like, why are you crying? What is the reason for your crying? He didn't answer, and he kept crying and crying and crying. So they went and sent to one of his friends, and they told him, come see what's going on with him. Like, why is he crying so much? So he came and asked him, why are you crying? He told him, I was reading the verse, وَبَدَى لَهُم مِّنَ اللَّهِ مَا لَمْ يَكُونُوا يَحْتَسِبُونَ. And they saw on the Day of Judgment from their Lord what they were not expecting. So his friend began crying with him. Sufyan al-Thawri, when he's talking about this verse, he's saying that this is for the hypocrites. The people who are doing many things and they're thinking they're in good shape, they're in good stand. When they come on the Day of Judgment, they will see from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala what they were not expecting. They're going to see from Him the punishment they were not expecting it. So if you feel that you're procrastinating, if you feel that your obedience for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're you're not that striving for that obedience, the Sahaba and the companions used to think about the hellfire. The verse Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنِّي أَخَافُ أَنْ عَصَيْتُ رَبِّي عَذَابَ يَوْمٍ عَظِيمٍ. That when the word ma'asiyah, or the thought of a sin comes to their mind, they always attribute it to عَذَابَ يَوْمٍ عَظِيمٍ. I fear if I rebel against my Lord, the retribution of an awful day. They always associate that, these two. Some scholars even took it to a next level, saying that fear is more important than hope. And the reasoning for it is what Marij ibn Masruq said once, "O my son, fear is before hope. Don't you see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created both the heaven and the hellfire? But to get to the heaven, you have to pass over the hellfire. So if all what you have is the drive for the heaven, how will you pass over the hellfire and you're not afraid of it?" So that was his reasoning for that fear always comes before hope. The companions themselves had that concept very profound, that the fear and the hope. And that can be, we see it in the saying of Sayyidina Umar, may Allah be pleased with him, when he said that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells all humankind to go to the Jannah or to the heaven, and one man is left out, I would fear that I would be that man. And if all mankind goes to the hellfire, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes them to hellfire, except one man, I would hope that I'm that one man. So we have the hope and fear in both the same standing. But who can be classified? What is that fear? Like, how do we know? There are different levels of fear. What is the level of fear that we're talking about here? Ishaq ibn Khalaf said the one who is in fear is not the one who cries and wipes his tears while he's committing sins. Because a lot of people, you feel bad when you're committing a sin, but you keep going on with it. Inshallah, I'll be better, maybe tomorrow, maybe next year, I will improve. That's not the fear, not the one who cries while he's committing the sins. The one who is in real fear is the one who left the sins because of his fear from his Lord. That when you try to avoid them because of your fear from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the Hadith Qudsi, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَعِزَّتِي لَأَجْمَعُ عَلَى عَبْدِي خَوْفَيْنِ وَلَا أَجْمَعُ لَهُ أَمْنَيْنِ إِذَا أَمَّنْتُهُ فِي الدُّنْيا أَخَفْتُهُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ وَإِذَا خَافَنِي فِي الدُّنْيا أَمَّنْتُهُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Hadith Qudsi that was narrated by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, saying that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swears that He will not combine two fears or two hopes on His servant. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if the servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fears Him in this life, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give him peace in the hereafter. But if he feels safe in this life, that he will make it to the heaven, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give him fear in the hereafter. So these were just a few reminders or thoughts about the hellfire and the hope and fear. But then what are the examples of the hellfire? We have to know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, and the Prophet said many examples about the punishment in the hellfire. So one of the first example is in the form of the interrogation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the human. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will get a man from the hellfire. That's narrated in a hadith. And He will bring that man and He will ask him, how did you find your home and place in the hellfire? The man will say, there is no place that can be worse than this. This is the worst place ever. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will tell him, would you like to give away gold, like the value of the earth, sacrifice it in order to get a better place? So he said, yeah. Oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, yeah, I would. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will tell him, no, you are lying. I asked you for less than that and easier from that, and you didn't do it. Go back to the hellfire. That the way that we can avoid the hellfire and get Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's reward is very easy. It doesn't require a lot of money. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't ask us to give us all our money. He doesn't ask for small rewards, small things that we can contribute with. He asks us for small actions that we can contribute with. So on the day of judgment, when we say that, inshallah, none of us are going to be in there, but the people who say that we are willing to give everything for that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, no, I have asked you for less, and you didn't deliver. The second example is a hadith. Nu'man ibn Bashir reported that he heard the Messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying, verily the least suffering for the inhabitants, from the inhabitants of the fire, would be for him who would have 2 shoes and 2 laces of fire on his feet. And with these 2 shoes and laces, his brain would boil as boils the contents of a cook pot. he will think that he would not see anyone in more grievous torment than himself, whereas he would be in the least torment. That is the least man punished in the hellfire. The third example, it's a hadith of Hurairah reported that the Prophet ﷺ said, the molar tooth of a disbeliever and the canine tooth of a disbeliever will be like Mount Uhud, will be the size of a mountain. And the thickness of his skin, itself is a 3-day journey. Example 4, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Most High, says in Surah Al-Ghafir, when the irons are around their necks, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is describing the punishment. When the irons are around their necks and chains, they are dragged through boiling water, then they are thrust into the fire. These are just a few examples of the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the hellfire. I didn't want to elaborate more. We can inshallah go back and read more about these punishments. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه. بسم الله الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونعوذ بالله من شرور انفسنا ومن سيئات اعمالنا انه من يهدي الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا ثم اما بعد. So what are the actions, as we mentioned in the heaven, what are the actions that can take us towards the heaven? We would like to mention also a few actions that would make us avoid the hellfire. The first one is the eyes that cry from the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the hadith, in one of the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ says that there are 7 kinds of people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will have them under his shade on the day of judgment. Some of them, or one category of them, وَرَجُلٌ ذَكَرَ اللَّهَ خَالِيًا فَفَضَتْ عَيْنَاهُ, a man who remembers Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone and his eyes went into tears. That was the actions of the Prophet ﷺ. Whenever he prays, the Sahaba used to say that he's crying as if, like you can hear the voice of crying in his chest. You can hear him crying, and all the companions, you can hear them crying. Yazid ibn Mithrid was asked once a guy met him in the street saying, like, well, how come we never see your eyes dry? You're always in tears. So Yazid asked him, why are you asking? And maybe I'll learn from you. So he responded, my Lord hath threatened to jail me in the hellfire if I disobey him. If he had just threatened to jail me in the bathroom, I would also be crying. So imagine that he's threatening you to in the hellfire. How would you feel? The Prophet ﷺ said in the hadith, the people of the hellfire would cry that if a ship would like to sail in their tears, it would. And their tears are of blood. So on the day of judgment, people will also be tearing, but their tears are going to be in rivers of blood. While a couple of tears in this dunya, or the tears that we have in this dunya, will help us avoid that. The second thing is to buy ourselves from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, the Prophet says, buy yourself from Allah even by a portion of a date. A portion of it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can buy yourself from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with that portion. That portion, it's a very cheap price. And that's why we saw in the hadith before, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, I asked you for less than that and you didn't. How are you saying now that you can give the whole earth? A lady once, Sayyidah Aisha narrates that a lady once came to her and she was very hungry. So Sayyidah Aisha didn't have much to give her, so she gave her 3 dates. The lady had 2 daughters with her. So the lady gave each one of her 2 daughters, gave them each one of a date, and took the date, the 3rd one, she was going to eat it. So while she was starting to eat it, the 2 girls wanted it. So she split them into halves and gave each one a half. So Sayyidah Aisha narrated that to the Prophet ﷺ. So the Prophet ﷺ said that with that date, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala either has given her the heaven or has avoided her from the hellfire. That she's not going to go to the hellfire, or that she's going to be in heaven. The Sahaba also had the same habit. The Sayyidina Abu Bakr was narrated that he once donated a grape, small grape. He had nothing, so he donated that grape. Sayyidina Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas also donated a date once. So the habit of donating, that it's not how much you give, it's the fact that you want to give. And in another hadith, that the Prophet ﷺ once came in the morning and he was asking his companions, who has donated yesterday? So no one responded. So he said, who has donated yesterday? No one responded. So he said, who has donated yesterday? And when the Prophet ﷺ asked 3 times, someone has to answer. That means the Prophet ﷺ wants an answer and someone has to say something. So one of the men came up and said, I donated yesterday. So the Prophet ﷺ told him, what did you donate? He said, I didn't. I was sitting at home. I wanted to donate. I had nothing at home to donate, nothing whatsoever. So I donated I forgave. My donation was forgiving everyone who has talked or backbited me without me knowing. I forgive all of them. And the Prophet ﷺ says that donation, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala kept it. The angels were not able to write it. They didn't know how to write it, the reward of it. So they kept it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward him on the Day of Judgment. So the fact is that you need to donate. And that will protect us from the hellfire, inshallah. Third thing is praying. And that was the same thing that will take us to the heaven. If we don't do it, that will be the same thing that will take us to the hellfire. Prophet ﷺ says in the hadith, لَنْ يَلِجَ النَّارَ أَحَدٌ صَلَّى قَبْلَ طُلُوعِ الشَّمْسِ وَقَبْلَ غُرُوبِهَا. That no man who prays, which is the prayer of the Fajr and the prayer of the Asr, both prayers, no man who prays them, he will go to the hellfire. The fourth thing is defending your brother. The Prophet ﷺ in a hadith says, whoever defends his brother from backbiting, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will free him from the hellfire. The act of when I hear someone, I have a couple of choices. When I hear someone backbiting someone else, either I can participate in the backbiting, and we know the punishment of that, or I can just move and leave and say, okay, I'm not going to participate in this, I'm leaving. Or you can defend your brother. When you defend your brother and say that, you take that action, you take an action to fix that one of that rewards that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will never take in the hellfire. The fifth thing is easiness and softness. The Prophet ﷺ says, should I tell you who the hellfire will be forbidden from, who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forbid the hellfire from touching him? كُلُّ هَيٍّ لَيٍّ قَرِيبٍ سَهْلٍ. I had a hard time to translate that, but I'll try. It's every easygoing person, every person that people can always approach, every person that when you need a favor, you can always go ask him and he's going to be there for you. He's gentle with others. That kind of person, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will avoid him from being in the hellfire, which entails the manners that we deal with others. Same as we were talking in the last khutbah about the heaven and how the heaven, every person who has good manners, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take him to the heaven. Every person who has good manners, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forbid that fire from touching him. Islam, the Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ, that I was sent to deliver the best of manners. This is a fundamental part in our religion, that you always have to deal best with others. You have to wish for your brother more than you wish for yourself. That is a fundamental part. The last thing is the Quran. There's a hadith, the Prophet ﷺ says that if there's something that has Quran in it, the fire cannot touch it. So the scholars say that the meaning of the hadith is, what if a human being has the Quran in him? He has a lot of the Quran in him. Then the fire will never touch him. So the Quran will testify. In another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said that the Quran will testify for you. The Quran, I don't recall the words of the hadith, but if the Quran testifies for you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will accept the testimony. The Quran is the best to testify. These were some actions. There's of course a lot of actions that we can take to avoid the hellfire and to increase our chances on the Day of Judgment and to help us to strive to be better humans and better people as our religion ordered us, and to strive to be better believers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and worshippers in this life.